I'm going to be talking about why practicing scales sucks and is boring and you don't want to do it, and how we can fix it so that we can practice scales in a way that's really fun, and on top of that is going to actually get us way, 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 way better than the way that you've probably been practicing scales if you're somebody who hates practicing your scales on the guitar. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Okay, so we're gonna be just going over, some of you might know this, the 5 major scale positions, and we're going to be using this as a kind of jumping off point for this video. So you got position 1, you got position 2, you got position 3, position 4, and position 5, and these are all positions of the C major scale, okay? So let's just take a look at position 1. So first of all, if you are watching this video and you agree with the statement, oh, practicing scales sucks, you're probably practicing them in the wrong way. So the first biggest wrong way that I always see people practicing their scales and really sucks, and it's unbelievably boring, is simply going, okay, here's my scale and I'm gonna go ahead and practice it, and it's gonna sound pretty much just like this. Okay, so what was wrong with what I just did there? Okay, there's a ton wrong, and it just bothers me so much because I constantly see people doing this. Okay, there's a few problems. First of all, I wasn't playing in time. Okay, I was just playing by myself, and my rhythm was all over the place. And all I was concentrated on is notes, 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 okay? And as a result, that didn't sound like music whatsoever. I mean, like, if you started playing that in front of people on a stage or something like that, you know, they'd want you to leave, right? That's not fun to listen to. And therefore, if it's not fun to listen to, it's certainly not gonna be fun for you to actually play. Now, I will say there's only one exception where doing something like this is kind of okay. And that is if, for example, you've never seen these positions before, okay? If this is a completely brand new concept to you, it might be okay to go through each of those positions in that manner, maybe a couple of times, okay? But as soon as you go, okay, I kind of know where those notes are, which for most people should take maybe 3 to 5 minutes, okay? At that point, you need to immediately start practicing it in time, okay? So whether that's with a metronome or with a drum track, you should be able to do both of those things. So even if it's just with a metronome and we're just playing quarter notes, you need to immediately start practicing them in time. So let's throw in a metronome really quick. And automatically, this is going to start to be at least a little bit more fun. Okay, this is not the most fun thing, of course, but it's much more fun than sitting there by yourself. So I won't play through the whole entire thing, but you get the idea, etc., etc. You should be able to play through that position in time, okay? Because when we're playing real music, it's gonna be in time, so it's forcing you to think quicker, and then also, on top of that, it's actually giving you the practical skill. It doesn't matter what notes you play, if they're not in time, it's not gonna sound good, okay? So, I mean, I will see people, it just bothers me so much, I'm sorry if I keep going on about this, but I see people who will keep practicing their scales in that way that I just showed you for months on end. I mean, there's no reason whatsoever to practice a scale out of time for more than the absolute bare minimum couple of minutes that it takes you to figure out where that scale is, okay? Then you need to immediately put it in time. Okay. Now we're going to get into the first thing we can do to actually make it more fun. Let's say, assuming that you can play through a scale in time and you can play through, let's say, quarter notes or eighth notes or even 16th notes. Okay. That is something that you should be able to do. Then, and even before that, maybe you can start practicing with different rhythms. Okay. So usually I always see people only practicing with either quarter notes or eighth notes or maybe 16th notes. Okay. And those are all very good things to do. Are they extremely fun to do? Probably not, right? That's probably why you're watching this. So, for example, let's go ahead and take that first the position, and we're gonna go ahead and play it up the octave there on the starting from the 12th fret, because as you can see, the first iteration of that uses the open strings, and then the next iteration of that starts from the 12th fret. It's important to know, by the way, anything that you learn that has a bunch of open strings in it, you're going to have to learn it up an octave, because that's going to be the actual shape that you can actually move around, okay, when you're practicing it. So what I would do is actually play this with some different rhythms, like something like this. Something like that. So you don't hear that very often, people practicing with an actual different rhythm. So a great resource, if you want to figure out some different rhythms to be able to practice your scales with, go ahead and check out my video called The Ultimate Guitar Rhythm Exercise, because it's going to teach you a whole bunch of different rhythm cells that you can apply to your improvisation, and you can also apply it to practicing scales. Okay, let's go ahead and just move into the second position, because we're going to kind of turn this into a semi, like learning all of the 5 positions of the C major scale while we're at this. Okay. So another rhythm that you could do is triplets. Okay, you don't hear people practicing too much with triplets. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then, of course, as a subset of that, you could go and say, I'm going to play a triplet and then a quarter note, something like this. Something like that. Or any number of combinations thereof. Maybe 2 triplets and then a quarter note. And then finally, one thing is just to keep thinking about more rhythms. I'm not going to go every single possibility, but rhythms that do not start on the downbeat. So if we go to a 16th note subdivision, one of my favorite cells from the Ultimate Rhythm Exercise is going to be this one that goes So it's if we're counting 16 notes, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a, we're just gonna play E and a. So E and a, E and a, E and a, E and a. That's a great rhythm to practice through your scales with too. You very rarely hear most guitar players actually practicing through their scales like this with different rhythms. And of course, by the way, indirectly, that's going to lead to you basically playing super boring rhythms in your solos. If you practice the materials that you're working on with more interesting rhythms, it's going to automatically make your rhythms more interesting when you actually go ahead and play solos. So now let's go ahead and move on to the next position, position 3. By the way, this one is, of course, we're just a reminder, we're in C major, but this is also known as the A natural minor scale just because it starts from A, okay? So now the next thing that we can do to make our scale practice more fun is practice with different interval patterns, okay? So I've talked about this in a little bit more depth in another video, but let's say thirds. So we play from A to C, and then B to D, and then C to E, and then D to F. So we kind of go through the whole entire thing like this. So that's going to be obviously a little bit more of a challenge on the brain. But again, it's lending us to be able to play more interesting patterns in our actual solos when we play. And of course, by the way, if you're being real creative, you can actually combine this idea with the last idea. So what if I play an interval pattern of, let's say, thirds, plus I change the rhythm? So something like this. Let's say I play some triplets. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and play the scale in thirds with triplets. These things keep it much more interesting and more fun rather than just going, oh my God, okay, today I'm going to practice my scales up and down. No. We don't want to do that. So with that being said, one more thing I want to add on to there is actually breaking up each of these scale patterns into like little groups of 2 strings. So a lot of times you can get a lot of good work in just practicing 2 strings at a time. So let's say like the top 2 strings here. And of course, I know it's closer to the floor, but it's the higher sounding strings, okay? I always get comments about that. That's not the top string, man. This is the top string. Yeah, well, I don't want to play bass notes and think of that as the top, okay? So something like this, I can even just work that kind of rhythm and that interval pattern over a little tiny segment of the pattern, because sometimes that helps a lot when we're having trouble running through a whole entire pattern. Let's just break it up into like a third. So something like that. So that will really, really help if you're ever having trouble getting through a whole entire scale pattern from top to bottom with whatever concept it is that you're practicing. Make sure you go ahead and break it up. Like these 2 strings, the 6th string and the 5th string. And then what about the 5th string and the 4th string? Something like that. So a lot of times I like to just break it up into different little parts. And that's something I've talked about before, by the way, is that you're going to become a better soloist if you know how to take a big pattern like this and break it up into as many different little chunks of notes as you possibly can. Because a lot of times people think, I need to play the whole entire scale the whole entire time when I'm soloing. No, a lot of times it's a matter of finding these little groupings of notes. And how many different ways can you break that scale up into 3 notes or 2 strings or something like that? There's a lot of different ways you can break up even one scale pattern like that. So now let's go ahead and move on to position 4, and we're going to talk about the next way to make scale practicing more fun. And this is, of course, going to be my favorite way, which is you got to practice improvising with your scales. So I remember when I was a kid that I kind of like didn't even know what the heck scales were for. Like I knew that people told me, oh, you need to practice your scales, you need to know them. And I always just thought it's kind of some exercise that you have to do. Like it's just going to make your technique better, I guess. But as I started getting more into improvisation and playing jazz and playing other modern music that requires improvisation, that's when I realized, oh, wait, the whole entire point of learning scales is because they are notes that sound good together that we can actually use to pick from to play our solos. So, of course, if you're a classical musician and you don't improvise, then practicing scales is more of just a pure exercise, like technique type of thing. But you and I here over in Jamsville, we're playing solos, we're improvising, and we are using it as a basis for our solos. So, therefore, we need to actually practice doing that. Whenever we learn a new scale or anything, we need to find something to be able to actually solo over with, okay? So we're going to go ahead and play over this little backing track, and let's go ahead and improvise a little bit with this fourth scale position here. Does that mean I have to play the whole entire thing, by the way? No. Notice, look, I'll grab 2 notes here. That's something I love doing, is just using what's called a pedal point, picking one note and then changing the other note. Yeah, if you're not improvising when you're practicing scales, okay, you're freaking doing it wrong, okay? You need to actually improvise this stuff, or it's not going to make you better at soloing. We cannot disconnect those two things. And just in general, my philosophy is every new thing that we learn on the guitar, okay, at some point, as soon as possible, ideally, we want to actually start improvising with that. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is that you need to actually learn your scales on one string at a time. Any key that I learn, okay, if it's C major, I need to be able to play any key because I need to be able to connect all of those 5 positions together. So any key that I learn, I want to be able to do it on one string at a time. And this is the way that I just teach the actual learning of the notes on the guitar fretboard, is going through one string at a time. So for example, the 5th string would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And all of those different ideas we talked about before, you should practice in that same way when you practice one string at a time. So practicing in time, practicing with a metronome, practicing with different rhythms, and practicing improvising. Because practicing improvising on one string at a time is one of the coolest ways for you to actually start breaking out of those box patterns and moving all over the guitar neck. So for example, a great string to practice on is any of actually those top 3 strings. You're going to be using those a lot when you are soloing. So, like if we take the 3rd string, by the way, I have another video where I go more in depth with this. It's called The Best Way to Memorize the Notes on the Fretboard. Make sure you check that out. So you have G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Make sure you go all the way to the top or all the way to the end of the guitar neck too. I know that's the same thing when you pass the 12th fret, but guess what? There's a little bit of a disconnect if you don't actually practice playing up in that upper register. It's a little bit confusing sometimes. Everything's closer together. It is still something you have to practice, even though it's, quote, the same thing. Sometimes people just stop at the 12th fret because they think, oh, well, it's the same thing. I don't need to do it. It's the same thing over and over again. No, you should definitely still go past the 12th fret, okay? So let's just solo a little bit on one string at a time so you can see how the playing that I incorporate sounds a bit different than what I was doing in those positions. it's really easy to make like patterns on one string at a time too, because you can see like, oh, let me take these 3 notes that are next to each other, and then we take the next 3 notes, and then the next 3 notes, and then the next 3. See, there's a lot different stuff going on there, and there's more slides going on. The slides sound really cool. You're not going to hear too many slides when you're playing in position, and it's just going to be a lot more fun. So you should be able to do that in any key as well. So if it's A major, for example, you should be able to go, okay, here's all the notes in A major: G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. Any string, you should be able to do that. And if you use all the techniques we talked about practicing, it's going to be a lot more fun, and it's going to directly make your soloing actually better every single time you go to improvise. So if you want to learn how to master the guitar fretboard so you can learn all of these scales all over the entire guitar neck, including on single strings in every single key, and I show you exactly how to do it step by step, so that you can play a solo over any backing track in any key, then make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com right now and pick up the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course. Also, make sure you head on over to the Jamsville merch store and pick up an awesome Jamsville t-shirt just like this one that I've been wearing, so you can represent the guitar player community and the Jamsville community, because if somebody sees you with the Jamsville shirt on, they're gonna know that you must be good, because you're watching the Jamsville YouTube channel. Also, make sure you check out my new song. It's called My Divine. Link is in the description below. That's what you're listening to right now in the background. Check out my music on Spotify. My artist name is Adam Paul. And finally, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button. It really, really, really helps when you subscribe and hit that like button. And it's free, doesn't cost anything whatsoever. And until next time, listen, learn, and jam.